The Gemara in Brachas, the Avrohom Beis, says, Agra de Hespeda deluye. The schar, the purpose of a hesped, of giving a eulogy on someone, is deluye. And the simple pshat of deluye, Rashi says, means when someone raises their voice in order to bring out bechia, in order to arouse people crying about the nifter. Deluye is a lashon of raising. If someone raises their voice and brings out bechia, brings people to shed a tear about the chash of a nifter, that's something that's the purpose, the tachlis of a hesped. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Hey Amid Beis, says that if someone sheds a tear on the patira of an adam kasher, that's so precious to the Rabbi Shalom that Hashem counts the tears and treasures such tears. So that's definitely the point of a hesped, to bring out the sadness, the loss of the person who was nifter. However, of Aaron Kotler Zatzal, in his hesped on the Chazon Ish, that's printed in the Mishnah of Aaron Chelek Gimel, he said you could teach the Gemara a little differently. Agra de hespeda, the purpose of a hesped, deluye. Deluye also means to draw up. When you draw water, it's called to be doyle mayim. A pail is called a deli because that's the vessel that we use to draw up. The hesped, the tachlis of a hesped, is to be deluye, to draw and to gain from the person who was nifter, to learn from their lifetime, to see how it could affect our lifetime. And that's also something that we want to accomplish tonight, not just to feel sad about the patira of Rabbi Belsky, but to draw from his lifetime to help enhance our lives in order that we can gain and grow and make ourselves better people. To learn from someone like Rabbi Belsky, one might think, is challenging because Rabbi Belsky was such a genius. He knew Kol HaTorah Kula. He knew every aspect in Torah. He knew things beyond Torah. He knew the chachmas. He knew math and science. He knew history, and he knew so many things. You think, how can I draw out from such a person's lifetime? There's no way I could ever know as much as Rabbi Belsky knew. There's no way I could be such a Talmud Chacham, such a Gadol, like Maran Rav Belsky Zatzal. However, when you think about it, there's really so much that we could learn from Rabbi Belsky's lifetime. I spent many years with him in Camp Aguda. I was there 11 summers, and I always kept a close kesher with him. But a few summers ago, in 2014, I said to my wife, I miss Rabbi Belsky. I miss spending summers together with Rabbi Belsky. And she said, so why don't you go to Camp Aguda and spend a few days there? I said, how am I going to spend a few days in Camp Aguda? I'm not a single boy anymore. And she said, try to figure something out, see how you could spend time there. And sure enough, I made arrangements, and I slept not far, and I stayed there for 3 days and 2 nights, and I just hung around Rabbi Belsky, listening to all his shiurim, having conversations with him. And the first morning I was there, I arrived for Shachris, and after Shachris I went over to him, I said Shalom Aleichem, and I asked him a question. And his response to the question was that this is a very difficult question. And I don't think in all my years I ever heard that answer from Rabbi Belsky. Nothing was ever difficult for him. And I said to him, I have Talmidim in the yeshiva in Waterbury, and I want to learn with them in the morning before we start the Gemara Shir. I want a sefer to learn with the boys. What's a good sefer to learn with the boys when we start the morning, just to get it started on the right foot? And tears came to his eyes, and he said, I know so many people have a favorite sefer. I don't have a favorite sefer to recommend to you. Every sefer is good. Every sefer is precious. You want to learn halacha, you want to learn musar, you want to learn stories of tzaddikim, everything that you want to do, all svarim are beautiful and wonderful. I daven every morning, v'seim b'libeinu bina lahavin ulahaskel, l'shmoya, lilmoid ulalamed, lishmar v'lasis ulakayim, es kol divrei salmut teirasecha ba'ava. I want to learn and teach and keep all the words of a Torah. I don't have a favorite part of Torah. I don't have a favorite sefer. And tears came to his eyes when he said, I love all svarim. All svarim are precious. And I felt at that moment that whatever inconvenience I was going through for those few days to spend some time with him in camp, it was all worth it because I just heard the greatest inspiration on Avas HaTorah, seeing how he loved every aspect, every sefer, every part of Torah. And even if we don't have the brain, the genius that Rabbi Belsky was blessed with, but that Avas HaTorah we could have, that passion, that appreciation of every sefer, to try to get whatever we can from the Torah, whether we're learning Chumash, whether we're learning Gemara, learning Mishnah Brura or Musar, whether we're learning a Sefer in Hebrew or in English. svarim on emunah, svarim about tzaddikim, anything that we learn to try to get as much as possible, to try to learn on our level, according to our capacity, to try to learn as much as we can. That fierce avas haTorah that Rabbi Belsky had is something that we can connect to and something that we could learn from. He taught us lessons from the Gemara for life. When he read a Gemara, he didn't just explain the Gemara, he told us how it's relevant to us in life. And he quoted for us a Gemara in Bava Kama, Daf Lamed Aleph, that the Gemara says, if there are two people walking on the way, and we'll call them Ruvain and Shimon, and Ruvain trips over something and he falls down, and right behind him is Shimon, and Shimon falls down on top of Ruvain, and Shimon gets hurt. So the Gemara says Ruvain is not responsible. It wasn't his fault that he fell, he tripped over something. However, if he waits a few seconds and he could have gotten up, and he didn't get up, and then Shimon falls on him, then Ruvain is responsible. Because that's negligent. Hayaloi lamoid, he should have stood up, v'loi amad, and he didn't stand up. So then he's responsible for the damages that Shimon had because he tripped over Ruvain. So Rabbi Belsky said that's not merely a halacha of damages, of payment, that's a yesod in life. Sometimes people fall, and it's not their fault. Hashem understands that we have ups and downs. We can't always be on the way up. That we're not going to be punished for. But after a person falls, it's our responsibility to pick ourselves up. He said many bachrim in yeshiva are waiting anxiously for that magical shmooze that's going to come and inspire them and lift them up. And somehow it never happens. And people could go through decades, years of life, waiting to be inspired by some outside force. And it doesn't happen because the inspiration has to come from within. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam, the pasuk says in Mishlei. A tzaddik falls 7 times, but what makes him a tzaddik? V'kam, he stands up. He realizes that he has to stand up. Rabbi Belsky said that Gemara Bava Kama teaches us that we are responsible. Hashem understands that we have downfalls, we have ups and downs, but we have to pick ourselves up and make sure that we go to the next level. The pasuk in Tehillim says, in Tehillim Lamed Beis, there are certain things that it's so important to daven for. And the pasuk says, Rak l'shetef mayim rabim, elav lo yagiu. The person shouldn't be swept up with the waters. And Rabbi Belsky teached for us, he said, it doesn't just mean that one should pray that he shouldn't get swept up with raging waters. It means that many times in life we're swept up with the crowd. And you have to daven for siyata d'shmaya, for Hashem's help, that we don't get swept up with the crowd. Rabbi Belsky turned to me and said, do you know that most people in the world have the same Rav? Most people in the world have the same Rav. And do you know what the name of that Rav is? Everybody does it. That's the name of the Rav. Ask around, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Everybody does it. But it's an imaginary Rav. There's no such Rav. You know you're not supposed to talk during davening. You know you're supposed to bench carefully and slowly. And yes, someone, why are you benching without a bencher and you're hardly saying the words? No, everybody does it. You just look around and this is what everybody does. He said that's the Rav that everyone relies on. The Rav whose name is everybody does it. That's the Shetef Mayim Rabim. That's getting swept up with the crowd. And even though we know in our hearts and in our minds that something is incorrect, but we do it because other people do it, and that's something that we have to daven for, something that we have to be protected from. Rabbi Belsky was sensitive to the feelings of every Jew, and that's something, as I said, even though we're not the genius that Rabbi Belsky is, the great Talmid Chacham that he was, but that sensitivity is something that we can connect to and something that we could learn from. I had a disagreement with my wife a number of years ago concerning mishulachim that came to the door. People came to the house, and sometimes I got a good feeling about them, and I would give them a few dollars, whatever I could, and sometimes I just had this feeling that the story sounds like it's contradictory, just things didn't add up. I just didn't get a good feel, and I felt like my tzedakah money is limited, so I just won't give those people. And my wife disagreed with me. My wife said, if someone comes to the door, give him something, even if you don't think that they're real. But how do you know? You can't trust your feelings. Give him something. So I said, you know what? We'll ask Rabbi Belsky. Whatever he says, we'll do. So we asked Rabbi Belsky. This he did not say is a difficult question. This he answered without batting an eyelash. And he said, your wife is 100% right. Made me feel bad, but I wanted to hear his psak on it. I said, why? Why is she right? I really feel that I could get a good sense of whether this story is true. He said, on the minute chance, a small chance, that this person is a sincere ani. He's collecting for something that's erlich, collecting for a family or for an organization that's sincere. you turn him away empty-handed, you've caused pain and anguish to another Yid. If there's a 0.1% chance that you're going to cause pain and anguish to another Yid, it's just not worth it. What are you worried about? That you're going to give $5 and it turns out that the person is a fake? I never lost a night's sleep thinking that money that's supposed to be in my pocket is in someone else's pocket. That's what Rabbi Belsky said. He said Hashem arranges on Rosh Hashanah exactly how much money you're going to have. Don't think if you give a little extra tzedakah, you're going to end up with less money and Hashem's cheshbon is not going to come to a correct balance. Whatever you're supposed to have, you're supposed to have. But on the slight chance that you're causing pain and anguish to another Yid, it's just not worth it. Your wife is right. You should give them something. You don't have to give a lot, but you should give every ani something. The Camp Agudah Masmidim, that was the program that Rabbi Belsky was in charge of, he took them on a trip to Boston one summer. And he told the group that he's going to be leaving the trip for a few hours because he wants to visit a child who is sick in a hospital in Boston. The kid was in camp, a 12-year-old boy. He was in camp the first half of the summer. Then he was diagnosed with a terrible illness, and now he was in a hospital in Boston. So Rabbi Belsky said, even though it's a little bit farther away than where we're going, but I would like to visit him. And sure enough, when they got to Boston, Rabbi Belsky took a taxi for an hour. He stayed there for an hour, and he came back for another hour. He spent 3 hours and a lot of money to visit this sick child, and he obviously made his day. That's part one of the story. Part two of the story is that the next summer, the manager of the canteen in camp told over to one of my friends that Rabbi Belsky, in all his years of camp, never went to the canteen. He just didn't eat nash during the day. He never went to the canteen, except once. The day before that trip to Boston, said the manager of the canteen, Rabbi Belsky came into the canteen and asked me if I remember that kid from the first trip. And I said, sure, I remember. Rabbi Belsky said, what nash does he like? Do you remember when he came and we looked at his bill, we looked at his cards, we were able to figure out something that he bought often, and Rabbi Belsky bought it for him and brought it to Boston for him. Not only that he should come visit a 12-year-old kid, but to buy him his favorite nash. That's sensitivity, not just for Mishulachim, but for a child, a 12-year-old sick child, to visit him and to give him something that he loved. I have a chaver of David Frischman who runs the Masmidim program. He ran it together with Rabbi Belsky for many years, and he told me recently that one summer, at the 2 days before the end of the summer, he went into Rabbi Belsky's office, and another boy was coming out, and Rabbi Belsky started to cry. And Rabbi David Frischman said to him, why is Rebbe crying? He said, you know that boy? He has a terrible stutter. And Rabbi David Frischman said, yeah, of course I know that boy. He has a terrible stutter. I know him for many years. So Rabbi Belsky said, the first day of camp, he came over to me to say Shalom Aleichem. And I saw that he has a terrible stutter, and I told him, I can help you. I researched stuttering. If you come to me once a week, I'll give you practice work, and by the end of the summer, you won't stutter. And he came to me once, and he came to me twice, and I gave him exercises, and it was getting a little better. And then he got busy with camp and his activities, and he just didn't follow up. And now it's the end of the summer, and he came to say goodbye, and he still has a terrible stutter. And I could have helped him. And Rabbi Belsky, tears were coming down his face, that he felt so bad that he was not able to help this boy. It's part one of the story. Part two of the story is the next summer, Rabbi David Frischman comes back to camp and sees this boy. This boy is now enrolled in the Masmidim program. And he says Shalom Aleichem, and he engages him in conversation. And this boy is talking perfectly, and he doesn't have a stutter anymore. And Rav David couldn't believe it. And he was so excited. He said, I'm going to go tell Rabbi Belsky. Rabbi Belsky will be so excited to hear the news that this boy doesn't stutter anymore. And he went running into Rabbi Belsky's office. And he said to Rabbi Belsky, you know this boy who had a terrible stutter last year who you wanted to help? He's talking perfectly now. He must have fixed his problem. And Rabbi Belsky broke out in a big smile. Rabbi David Frischman said, Rebbe, did you help him? He said, I got in touch with him after the summer. Every Sunday he came to me from Monsey to my house in Brooklyn, and I gave him exercise, and after many months, his stuttering was gone. Unbelievable for Rabbi Belsky to be so concerned about this child, and then when the child didn't care enough, Rabbi Belsky followed up and spent the whole winter with him and made sure that he was able to stop stuttering. That's the type of sensitivity that we could learn from an Adam Gadol and become better people through that. Rabbi Belsky was a master at giving musar. Giving musar is not easy. Telling people they're doing something wrong. No one likes to hear that they're doing something wrong. But Rabbi Belsky was great at it because he gave it as a friend and he didn't talk down to the person. Rabbi Belsky told me once that he challenged himself to give musar to a person in Tarvadas it seems that nobody is talking during davening, and there was this one guy who started davening there, and he was talking a lot during Chazaras Hashatz, and people told him, shh, you're not allowed to talk during Chazaras Hashatz, and he didn't listen. So Rabbi Belsky said to himself, I'm going to help this guy stop talking during Chazaras Hashatz. So Rabbi Belsky told me, what did I do? I went over to him with a Mishnah Berurah that has the din in Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to talk. And I said to him, I was once talking during Chazaras Hashatz. This is Rabbi Belsky made up about himself. He said, I was once talking during Chazaras Hashatz, and someone came over to me and showed me, look, there's a Beferish Halacha, Siman Kuf Chav Dalet, Siv Zayin. It says you're not allowed to talk during Chazaras Hashatz, and if you do, it's a great Aveira, greater than we could carry. I thought it was like an Inyan or whatever, a Chumrah. I see it's a Beferish Halacha. And the guy's looking at it, and he says, oh yeah, you never knew that? Yeah, it's sure, yeah, it's right Beferish right there. Rabbi Belsky said, the guy stopped talking during Chazaras Hashatz. I showed him that it was a halacha, not showing him that it's a halacha, telling an old story about how someone showed me that it's a halacha, and then the person's defense went down, and he was able to accept the musar. The pasuk says by giving musar, "Haicheach toicheach es amisecha." You have to give musar to your friend. Maybe that's the message in the pasuk. You have to give musar. How is it effective to give musar? Es amisecha. If you give it to him as a friend, if you're talking down to the person, it's very hard for a person to accept the musar. But if you give it as a friend, then the person is ready to accept it. I just want to add one last point that we could learn from Rabbi Belsky, and then we have to give over to the other speakers. 50 speakers can still talk about Rabbi Belsky in all different facets, but B'chol Zos, I want to give everybody a chance. Rabbi Belsky was passionate about making a Kiddush Hashem. Everywhere that he went, he made a Kiddush Hashem. He interacted with yeshiva people, with balabatim, with people who were not so affiliated to Yiddishkeit at all, and to the non-Jew in the street. And to everyone, he was Makadish Shem Shemayim. He told me once that he had a Talmud who called him with the following shaila. He bought a house, and the person who he bought the house from was a non-Jew, and they said that the diamond ring of the mother of the house was lost somewhere in this house many years ago. They couldn't find it. If you ever find the diamond ring, please be in touch with us so we can come get it. So many years went by, sure enough, just like the first family didn't find the diamond ring, so this family didn't as well. Then they did some renovations in the bathroom, and they picked up the bathroom sink, and sure enough, laying right there behind the sink, minding its own business, was a little diamond ring. And the guy said, oh my gosh, this is the diamond ring that this lady lost. And he looked at it, and it was a real diamond ring. And he said, this is a lot of money. And it was a guy who lost it. And they'll never find out that I lost it. Maybe halachically I'm allowed to keep it. It's not going to be a chil Hashem. Let me ask Rabbi Belsky. So he called Rabbi Belsky with this shaila, am I mechuyev to return it? Should I return it? Should I find the Gayish owner of this diamond ring? Or should I look at it as a matana from Hashem and just keep it and support my family with it? Rabbi Belsky said 100% you should make efforts to return it. Not because you're mechuyev to return it. We could talk in the sugya, maybe you are mechuyev, maybe you're not mechuyev. But look what a great Kiddush Hashem you would cause if you find those people and you give them back the diamond ring. And he said that the Yerushalmi says in Bava Metzia that Shimon ben Shetach's Talmidim bought him a donkey, and on that donkey there was a diamond that was hanging, a jewel that was hanging from the donkey. And the Arab merchant who sold him the donkey didn't know that there was this jewel there. And Shimon ben Shetach said to his Talmidim, go return it to the Arab merchant. He never meant to sell me the jewel. And they said, but he's not going to know about it, and he'd never find out about it. And Shimon ben Shetach said, you think all I want to do is gain money in this world? I want to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. And the Talmidim returned the donkey, and when they gave it back to the Arab merchant, the merchant said, Baruch Eloikei Shimon ben Shetach. Blessed is the God of Shimon ben Shetach. Baruch Eloikei Shimon ben Shetach. Blessed is the God of Shimon ben Shetach. So Rabbi Belsky said, if that's our goal in this world, to make a Kiddush Hashem, why don't you return the diamond ring? So sure enough, the person called the family, and the mother was already much older, and she was in a nursing home. And he called the nursing home, and the nursing home said that she had passed away already. So then already the Yetzer Hara was getting to him. She had passed away already, maybe I'm allowed to keep it. But he got in touch with the family members, with the children, and he called them up and he said, remember your mother's diamond ring that was lost? We found it, I want to return it to the family. And he returned it to the family. And that Sunday night, he got called from a priest, a non-Jew, a priest in the church that this family went to every Sunday. And he said, I had to call you to see if this story is true. Is it true that you returned the diamond ring to the children of this and this woman? I can't believe that a human being would do that. And he said, yes, it is true. We found it. We don't want to keep something that's not ours. And I gave it. And I remember Rabbi Belsky telling over the punchline of the story that the priest said to this Talmud of Rabbi Belsky, he said, blessed is the God of the Jews. Blessed is the God, Baruch Elokei Shimon ben Shatach. And I remember when I brought my children one Sunday on Hanukkah to Rabbi Belsky's office, I asked him to repeat the story to my children, and tears were rolling down his face when he was telling it over to my children. Blessed is the God of the Jews, Baruch Elokei Shimon ben Shatach. It's the greatest schus to have had a hand in such a Kiddush Hashem that was caused. Let's all remember Agra de Hespeda Deluye. In addition to shedding a tear over the sad patira of such an Adam Gadol, we have to be doila, we have to draw up from his life and learn so many things from his life. To try to learn from Rabbi Belsky's Avas HaTorah, to learn the lessons, Hayaloi Lamoid V'loi Amad, not to get caught up with the flow of water going along with the crowd just because everybody does it, to learn from his sensitivity to Mishulachim, and to young children, the sick boy in Boston and the boy from Muncie who started, and always to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. And if we learn these things from his life, we should all be Zoicha in our journey through life, to grow in our devotion to Torah and our sensitivity to others, and to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. And if Rabbi Belsky's life can inspire us to do these things, it will undoubtedly be an aliyah for his holy neshama. And in Mirz Hashem, we will all be Zoicha to the ultimate happy days of the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu.